This is CNN 10, your 10-minute objective explanation of world events. And I'm Carl Azus. We hope you had a great weekend. Starting things off for us this September 18th, the United Nations General Assembly. It's a branch of the UN, and it's the big one. All 193 members of the United Nations are part of the General Assembly. And they're having their general debate starting this Tuesday. These events are held annually and have a theme. This year's is focusing on people striving for peace and a decent life for all on a sustainable planet. But many other subjects will certainly come up. The U.S. expects those to include North Korea's weapons programs. The country test-fired another missile over Japan late last week. The international nuclear deal with Iran could also factor in, as well as the civil war in Syria and terrorism around the world, like the bombing attack on a subway in London that injured 30 people on Friday. International leaders will be listening to what U.S. President Donald Trump has to say about some or all of these issues when he speaks on Tuesday. The speech will also be closely watched in part because the U.S. contributes the largest share of the United Nations budget, about 22% of it, and President Trump has called for America's contribution to be reduced.
The flags are up. It's time for another United Nations General Assembly global get-together. As always, the United States is the host country. Much of the world's big names will attend, none bigger than President Trump himself, whose name has been just up the street from the UN for years, at the Trump World Tower building. Trump, a New York real estate mogul, has not always embraced the UN. After his election, Trump said the UN was a club where people like to talk.
Welcome to the White House.
Trump was more conciliatory when members of the UN Security Council visited the White House in April.
I have long felt the United Nations is an underperformer, but has tremendous potential.
President Trump will speak to the entire world for the first time from here at the General Assembly rostrum. The leader who vowed fire and fury if Kim Jong-un threatens the U.S. will be closer to North Koreans than he ever has been in his life. The North Korean delegation will be seated here in the front row, just 20 feet away from where President Trump speaks to the General Assembly.
I think you're going to have the president who did the bombing on Syria from the chemical weapons, the one that has gone against ISIS in both Syria and Iraq at record pace.
Other first-time speakers include President Emmanuel Macron of France. It is also the first UN General Assembly for Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Richard Roth, CNN, United Nations.
10-second trivia. Which of these events took place on September 17th, 1787? The Whiskey Rebellion, U.S. gained independence, the Constitution was signed, or the Constitution was ratified? The U.S. Constitution was signed on September 17th, a date now known as Constitution Day. It's Constitution Day. On this date in 1787, 39 delegates to the Constitutional Convention signed the document that today is the oldest written constitution still in use by any government. We're finding out how much you know about the U.S. Constitution, starting with some fun true or false questions. All right, number one. The word democracy appears in Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. Answer, false. The word democracy doesn't actually appear anywhere in the document. Next, Benjamin Franklin was the oldest person to sign the Constitution. This is true. He was 81 and in declining health, so he needed someone to help him sign it. And it's said that as he did, tears were streaming down his face. 3. Some delegates to the convention refused to sign the Constitution. Answer, true. Of the 6 delegates who did not sign, 3 of them, Edmund Randolph and George Mason of Virginia and Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts, refused to do so. Partly because the Constitution didn't have a Bill of Rights. Those amendments guaranteeing individual liberties were proposed 2 years later. Moving on, 2 future U.S. presidents signed the Constitution. One was George Washington. Who was the other? We'll give you some options on this one. Was it John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, or James Monroe? The answer, C, James Madison. Madison's also called the father of the Constitution because he contributed so much to it. Since the ratification of the Bill of Rights in 1791, how many additional amendments have been added to the Constitution? Is the answer 7, 10, 12, or 17? If you said D, 17, you got it. That last amendment, the 27th, says that a pay raise for members of Congress cannot take effect until after an election. Now, which branch of the U.S. government is mentioned first in the Constitution? Is it the legislative, judicial, or executive? Answer A. The legislative branch's powers are laid out in Article 1 of the Constitution. This is the branch that includes the House of Representatives and the Senate, and it's charged with making the laws that govern the country. Finally, where can you find the original copy of the Constitution? Is it in Fort Knox, Kentucky, the Library of Congress, the Smithsonian Institution, or the National Archives? Answer D. The National Archives building in Washington, D.C. To preserve the quality of the document, it is kept at 67 degrees Fahrenheit and 40% humidity. And you could say that fascinating fact constitutes our Constitution Day quiz. The United Nations estimates that in the nation of South Africa, there are 3.7 million orphans, and that half of them have lost one or both parents to the AIDS virus. When a school teacher who found an abandoned child took him to police, she was told she should take care of him. Rosie Mushale says she promised God to look after orphans if he promised to provide her with the resources. Today, she's known as Mama Rosie, a CNN hero.
Khayelitsha is a very, very, very poor township. Close to 1 million people are living here. There are so many orphans who are left behind by their parents because of HIV and AIDS. When I moved here, nearby was a dumping place. Every morning I will hear the children trying to find something to eat. I called them in and we sang rhymes and I gave them bread. And that was the birth of the daycare center. Oops! In the year 2000, I found a boy on my doorstep and I took him in. That was the birth of the orphanage. The police were bringing the children, the social workers were bringing children. I've never turned any child away. We've got the children's home for 126 children. Blessings on me. We feed them, we clothe them, we send them to school, then we do counseling for them. Most of them are abandoned, they are orphans. They have been infected with HIV and AIDS. We do have a medical center for children. Mololo Pink. The basic things that we give in them, it's the love. And when they see me, they always feel happy. We have children, they came here a day old, and now they are young adults. We provide them with job opportunities and letting them to finish their education. Our center now has become a sentinel of hope for the people of Khayelitsha. My hope for the children is that they can be accomplished. Everybody has got a dream, and my wish is for their dream to be fulfilled.
Ten out of 10? More like 110 out of 10, because 110 is the number of ropes this Chinese elementary school student was jumping. You've heard of double Dutch. This is 11 Dutch. And the video from the Guinness World Record Archives shows exactly how the record of most ropes skipped was set. And it's not just the jumper who got the credit. She shares it with her 55 classmates who kept the dream and the ropes alive. But you wouldn't need to crisscross the world to side-swing things in favor of getting your own leg over the record. A new one may be just a hop, skip, and a jump away, assuming you can rope in 56 people to help. Woo! I'm Carl Azus for CNN 10.